I'm Jim Holman, editor of the San Diego Reader, and I'm speaking with Anthony Davi, who is, well, let's just say my expert on Little Italy. Anthony used to give tours of Little Italy,
Yes.
as I recall. And one of the funny things is when I first met Anthony, Judith Moore had come out, or we had come out with publishing Judith Moore's stories for the Reader about the Sicilians, the Sicilian community, in particular a man named Frank Bompensiero. And it seemed to me that you asked me, could you use that book on the tour? Could you give it away or sell it at the end of the tour? Is that right?
Yes, indeed. Bompensiero, a very enigmatic figure. People still speak in hushed tones about him. And when we discussed that, it was very interesting to see that there was a book, and it was a great read, and I was happy to share it with our people visiting the area.
So Judith was an editor of the Reader. Judith Moore was an editor of the Reader, and she wrote a fair number of longer pieces, long cover stories. But one that she spent the most time on, I believe she spent 10 years writing this story about Little Italy, and in particular Frank Bompensiero. So I want to go back and ask a few questions about Little Italy. Most people in San Diego know about Little Italy. They know the restaurants here.
Of course.
Can you tell us a little bit about the earliest days of Little Italy? Why did people come here, and where did they come from?
Right. Well, the earliest arrived in 1871, two fishermen. And they're two fishermen. They were interviewed by a print reporter, and they had mentioned they came for two gold rushes, the big one in Sacramento and then a small one in Julie in 1870.
Oh.
And they came for the harbor because they knew about it from their ancestors, that this was a perfectly enclosed harbor. That Cabrillo had mentioned it in 1542, and they were fishermen. They wanted to be near the harbor. So that eventually put the idea that there was this beautiful harbor here, same latitude as Sicily. Eventually the Sicilians would come.
Now, the next big question is, where were they coming from in Sicily?
Right.
Were they coming from that famous place that you and I have talked about,
Right.
Porticello?
Yes, Porticello.
Porticello.
Most of the Sicilians in this area are from Porticello. They call them the Porticidodi, people from Porticello.
Wow. Wow.
And, this is the same latitude as Porticello. The climate is the same. Fishing, they've been fishing for tuna in Porticello since the time of the Greeks.
Oh,
and
wow.
so they have the most experience, and San Diego eventually would become the center of the world tuna industry, and the Sicilians from Porticello would dominate.
You're not from there. You're not from Porticello.
My family's from Palermo, which is about 12 miles from Porticello.
Okay, but you know who they are.
I know a few people.
No, and it's amazing to me. In Judith's book, when she mentions a lot of these families, I thought, wait a minute. So today we are sitting in the little courtyard behind Our Lady of the Rosary Church in Little Italy on Date and State Street. We're actually on Date and Columbia over here in the back of church. And in the back of church for many years, they had the names of all these families, fishermen families mostly, but I think mostly Porticidodi.
Yeah, perfect.
People from Porticello who built the church. And among those names was the Bompensiero name. I'm not sure they had Frank Bompensiero, but they had Bompensiero, and the Balistraris, and the San Filippo. A lot of those old original families were in the back of the church. And just this year, when they remodeled it, those little plaques are gone.
Oh my!
I don't think it was intentional. I think it was part of the redesign or redecoration of the church. But I remember seeing those names every day that would come to mass there. I think, wow.
It gave me pause when you said that.
Well, anyway, so these people from Porticello, now did they come here directly or did they go somewhere else first?
Very good question. A lot of them originally came in the 1890s. Milwaukee was already an industrial magnet, and there was a lot of opportunity for entry-level jobs in these manufacturing companies. There were several: Falk, Milwaukee Road. There were some other companies that they were very big in manufacturing, and so it drew the Italians to come there with the promise of a job. They actually advertised from Milwaukee for Sicilians to come.
Why Milwaukee? Milwaukee's a German town. I don't get it.
They needed unskilled labor, and they had a hardworking labor force ready to come here, and they came. They went to St. Louis as well. Okay. And, the Sicilians didn't realize how cold it was going to be when they got it. They eventually realized that there were other places, and eventually they would find San Diego.
And why? I mean, Judith mentions this in her book, or her stories, which we made into a book. Why did they leave Sicily? I mean, what was wrong with Sicily? Why did so many people immigrate?
That's a good question. You know, the Sicilians always said that Christ never came south. That
Oh.
development was always slated in the north, and after Italy becomes a united republic with a flag in 1870 with a king and queen,
Oh.
Margherita, Umberto, development tended to favor the north, and the south was kind of forgotten. And they
that
had
makes sense. So the unification of the country kind of worked against Sicily's favor.
indeed. Even though people may have had
Oh.
hopes, things didn't turn out as well. And as things got worse, people realized maybe we need to leave this land and go over the sea.
So San Diego was the beneficiary of Italy's unification. So they came here, and where exactly? They wanted to be near the fishing boats, and the fishing boats were all along the harbor here. Is that right?
Right. Grape Street, which is on the National Historical Register, is still there. A lot of the boats were along Grape Street. A lot of them were right along what would later become the Embarcadero. And so everything was located right here. They could walk to work.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, well now I want to invite people to come to our next segment of the podcast here, which is we're going to talk about the years of Prohibition.